Live from the European Parliament here in Strasbourg, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have for you on the menu. Tempers flare, a blistering debate over Brexit and migration sees insults fly. We'll break down all the best bits, including Tajani stare down. The Parliament's president has Nigel Farage in his sights. We talk live to Antonio Tajani. Divided Europe, what the U.S. ambassador had to say today about America's relationship with the EU. War on plastics. MEPs vote to ban single-use plastics, but will member states follow through? And troubled soul. An Italian MEP's response to budget crisis prompts a fierce response. All right, it's time to meet our panel for tonight. We have joining us Gabriele Zimmer. She's a German MEP and group leader of the European United Left. Gabriele, which of these stories are you watching closely?
Of course, when we started today in the morning, the discussion on the summit, on the last summit, and also on the outcome of the summit, and that we're saying, nothing happened. Why this summit
no results. So that's what you're watching closely. All right. And joining us also tonight is Stephen Wolfe. He's an independent MEP from the UK. What about you, Stephen? Which story do you like?
I think it's the divided Europe. I think what we're seeing not only in the UK, a divided Europe over Brexit, I'm seeing it here in the European Parliament, a divided Europe between countries like Italy, Romania, Hungary and Poland, but of course a divided Europe from the United States. So this is something that's really serious, I believe, at the moment.
Division being a key theme in a lot of issues these days here. All right, we have a lot of stories coming up for you in the program. First, let's start with our top story, the strong words that came out this morning during a fiery debate in Parliament. It was supposed to be an official debrief of last week's Council summit on Brexit and migration, but comments about right-wing extremism quickly derailed the session. Let's take a look.
Mr. Bullman, I would remind you, when you talk about right-wing extremists, we have to remember that Nazis were National Socialists. It's a strain of socialism. So let's not pretend it's a left-wing ideology. They want the same things as you. Let's be quite clear. So, Mr. President, despite all that, you don't like the truth, do you? Yeah, you don't like that.
They won't like the truth here.
Come on, it's National Socialism. Right, OK, thank you. A lot happened. You idiot. I'm telling you, it's a left-wing ideology, OK? Don't pretend. Right. Thank you. So whether it's Brexit or the migration crisis, the time for talking and posturing on both sides is nearing an end. It is time to focus on the future, not simply cry over the past. Thank you.
Non credo che in quest'Aula ci siano nostalgici o eredi del nazismo o della dittatura comunista sovietica, due orribili e devastanti sistemi politici che hanno arrecato ferite profonde all'Europa. Grazie a Dio queste due dittature sono scomparse grazie all'Unione Europea. C'è poco da ridere, c'è da rispettare le idee degli altri, anche se non si è d'accordo. Risus abundat in ore stultorum. Imparate a rispettare gli altri se volete essere rispettati. Onorevole Farage, impari a rispettare gli altri, perché questa è la democrazia. Lei evidentemente è un nostalgico di qualche dittatura se non rispetta le opinioni degli altri. Noi le abbiamo sempre rispettato le sue, lei non ha alcuna autorizzazione a non rispettare quelle degli altri. Rimanga in silenzio.
Under Rule 164 of our revered procedures, I am allowed to respond to the comments you made as President of the Parliament, some of them personally insulting. Maybe you have a bit of a problem with your temper. I will ignore the personal comments you've made about me, but I will say this. We do seem this morning to be struggling just a little bit with our history. To claim, Mr. Tajani, that the European Union brought about the downfall of Nazism and Soviet communism isn't only laughable, it is very ungracious and deeply insulting to the United States of America, who made massive sacrifices so that Europe could be free twice in the 20th century, and to a slightly lesser extent, the United Kingdom, as 30,000 British dead in Italy will attest. So, you can claim what you want for the European Union, but please do not rewrite history.
All right, that pause you saw there, that wasn't the video freezing. That was Antonio Tajani staring at Nigel Farage. And we will be having the EU Parliament President live a little bit later on. But first, let's talk about everything we saw there. Gabrielle, as you were watching, you were shaking your head, you were putting your arms in the air. What was it like earlier inside there?
Yeah, I was totally surprised to hear what Mr. Kamal was saying, the leader of the ECR from Great Britain, because his words to bring together socialism, or democratic socialists and social democrats, together with nationalists and socialists, national socialists, it's incredible. And saying this is a part of the left ideology. Then I have to say, and I said it also in the discussion as when I had the speech or so, you have to learn from the history that in the past it was not the same, that it was it's a big...
But you were angry.
Yes.
You were angry.
Yeah, totally. Because you can't say that social democrats, the democratic socialist, I am a democratic socialist, that we have as a kind of ideology the nationalist socialism or so. This it's wrong. It's totally wrong. It's a kind of a way to discriminate us and to say, look also
Stephen,
to what is going now.
You disagree?
Yeah, I think. Unfortunately, Gabrielle and many in the chamber are misunderstanding the point that Mr. Kamal was making, and many of people like myself will argue the same. We are in a different time. Let's get that back. We cannot take away the fact that in history, National Socialism was a form of socialism.
No,
that is a historical
never,
element. And I am someone who has studied history, worked on history as well as
me
law.
too.
And you may not accept that as a principle. Some of the founding language that was used in National Socialism. Now, of course, democratic socialism, which Gabrielle and others, is different. So the point is, in that debate, someone like myself, who is a conservative, who has what is deemed, and I don't believe we have a right-wing, left-wing ideology anymore, is right-wing, we're attacked. But of course, in the past, the left also had those who were aggressive.
Well, what I'm seeing
and
now,
nasty.
even just between the two of you right now, very passionately disagreeing with each other. Before the show, we were talking about divisions. You mentioned divisions, fractious divisions. Is this the underlying tone now in Europe? Just division.
I was surprised that our British colleagues don't know enough about European history and the fight of social democrats, of left people against the fascism. And the fascism was called, they named themselves as national socialists, and that had nothing to do with the fight of left people, communist people, social democrats people, Jewish people against the fascism. Look to that, what was written on the misusing of languages as a sort of the language of
we can talk about we can talk about history, and both of you have differing views. But you were talking to me earlier about how you felt the UK was being viewed now by the 27 remaining countries.
Yeah, I think so. And what we're saying is Gabrielle and I are discussing this, and we can disagree in a calm and nice way. But what I'm seeing in that chamber at the moment, not only in this Strasbourg, but in the previous two Strasbourgs now, is a very strong breakdown in terms of the language. It's not just the words that are saying, it's the tone and the movement of the body language that you see between them. And the way Marcus Weber and Verhofstadt are being much more hostile. But we're throwing in people like the
Is that genuine? Is it genuine? Or
I think it is
trying to get headlines?
No, I think Verhofstadt always likes to get a bit of headlines, but I genuinely think now that there is a hostility there towards some of those who have a different stance, particularly in the United Kingdom. And we're feeling that. We certainly feel
Is there a hostility right now?
Yes, of course it's there. But if we don't respect our history, our self-understanding, our political culture, and what we are fighting now for, if we don't respect each other, then this will be the result. And one of the questions is, if you are speaking about social nationalism or national socialism, then you totally ignore the fight against fascism, and that we have
it's a point that you have made.
That we have now
right.
in Germany and other countries, naming fascists, naming themselves as
and I think there
national
are
socialists.
MEPs, on both sides of the spectrum, very passionately talking about this subject. My colleague Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, he had been reaching out to people in this building, trying to see, what the mood is like. Let's cross over to you, Darren. What have MEPs been talking about? What happened this morning? It was quite riveting what we saw.
Yeah, it really was, and there was a combination, I think, in many regards of anger, fury and outrage from many MEPs about Kamal Saeed's comments. Many thought it was beyond the pale, not least of all, I think, Frans Timmermans, the Vice President of the Commission, who said that, essentially called him an idiot at one stage. Guy Verhofstadt waded in as well, saying it was an insult to all those social democrats who had fought against the Nazis. And Udo Bullmann said it was an awful thing to say, saying, of course, that many social democrats had voted against Hitler in the Reichstag. I think in many regards, though, Tessa, this is a reflection of the increased tension we're seeing between essentially the mainstream parties here in the European Parliament and populists, and that tension is only likely to increase with the increased number of populists after the next election here in the Parliament next May. In addition to that, we see the continued sensitivity about, unsurprisingly, about the issue of Nazism, its role in history, and I think that again is a reflection of it, not least of all because we see images coming from Germany and elsewhere of the rise of the very far right. That is not to say, of course, the fury was confined to those who found Saeed Kamal's comments insulting. It was also on the other side as well, not least of all from Nigel Farage, who found himself at the centre of it all. And I caught up with him just after that debate had ended.
The President of the Parliament tried to calm it all by saying, well, anyway, the important thing to remember is that Nazism and communism fell because of the European Union. Well, I couldn't help myself. I mean, obviously I laughed, but I mean, not out loud, just a little snigger. And he lost his rag. It was as if there's trouble in the class. Like, it's always that naughty boy Farage at the back. So he started screaming at me, telling me that I was a supporter of dictatorship. I mean, quite bizarre stuff. So I did come back to him and say, well, actually, you can believe what you want, but rewriting history is not that clever. And quite how Nazism fell because of the European Union is beyond me.
I think ultimately, Tessa, many voters, many people who pay these MEPs' wages will be looking at what's happened today, thinking it's a rather archaic argument, and that ultimately their representatives would probably be talking about something other than, was Hitler a socialist, someone on the far left or the far right?
All right, thank you for that. Darren McCaffrey, political editor. Now, one of the voices at the centre of this morning's debate is here with us live in the studio. European Parliament President Antonio Tajani is joining us. Thank you very much for being on Raw Politics.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, now, we saw you this morning. You were very angry. What was going on there? What was going through your mind? You were staring at Nigel Farage.
Yes, we need to respect our values. When I say, thanks to the European Union, we have peace in Europe. The European Union is the end of the communism and the Nazism. Because for us, as European, this is a big problem, Nazism and communism. A lot of people killed. And the reaction of Mr. Farage, ha 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 ha. We need to respect our values. Also, if you are against the European Union, we need to respect. I respect the Union Jack, the United Kingdom, and respect everyone. In this Parliament, we need to respect the values and the rules. It's possible to be against the European Union, but we need to respect the other's opinion. I respect the people in favor of Brexit. I am against, but I respect. My reaction is not ha 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 ha. For this is not a circus. This is the European Parliament. We need to respect. If Mr. Farage wants to live in a circus, This parliament, for me, is not a circus.
You're talking about a circus, and we heard a lot of strong language exchanged at the parliament, among the different MEPs. Is this the kind of, is this a glimpse of what we can see in the campaigning towards the European Parliament? Is this the kind of politics and behavior
the parliament,
that we're going to see?
There are a stronger position on most important point. Today, the debate between the leader of the Conservative party group, Mr. Kamal, and the leader of the Socialist group was very strong crash on if the Nazism is left or right. That is historical debate, but with a strong debate between the two groups. And I said nobody here is in favor of Nazism.
But is this the kind of words we will hear, like political decency? Is this the kind of words we're going to see with politicians?
But my position is in defense of the European Parliament. My job is to defend the image of the European Parliament, and I say, here nobody is in favor of communism, nobody is in favor of Nazism.
And for
Mr. Farage, ha ha ha.
All right, now for the divisions, we talk about divisions. One of the big divisions.
We need to respect. My job is to work in favor of the respect of the European Parliament.
And there are two different opinions: Italy and the European Union, the European Commission, and the Parliament. You are an Italian, and you are of the European Parliament. You're in both worlds. In this standoff between Italy in terms of the budget, are you an Italian or are you European?
Both. I am European because I am Italian.
So do you understand what the Italians are coming here arguing with their budget?
I disagree with the Italian position, but also I disagree with the language of the European Commission against Italy. We need to be calm. We need to have a debate on the content of the Italian budget. For me, as Italian politician, the Italian budget is not a good budget. No growth. We will have the same today taxation the next year.
Right.
Nothing in favor of small and medium-sized companies. Nothing in favor of infrastructure. For this, I am against.
What do you
but we need to respect
with the European Commission?
But the European Commission is the job of the European Commission.
I
disagree with the European Commission when the European Commission is against one member state, when his position is a strong position, aggressive position.
So you found it aggressive?
In this difficult moment for Europe, for the European institutions, and because there are a lot of populistic parties, we need to be calm, we need to study the content, we need to decide, not the battle between Brussels and Rome.
All right.
This is not important. The problem is the content of the budget.
And there's another important issue we've been talking about here in Parliament. We talked about in the show. There's a blog recently that was launched. It's called on the Me Too movement, detailing horrific details of sexual assault or harassment in the Parliament. Does the Parliament have a problem?
No, because we're working hard.
Have you seen this blog and read those stories?
But I think there is a team working on this. The team leader is the Questor Morin-Chartier. In this team, there are assistants, civil servants, and questors of the European Parliament. Nobody asked to this team, I have a problem on sexual harassment, on psychological.
So there's no problem of sexual harassment here?
I don't know. It's not.
Okay.
I am here. There is this team working hard. There is a lot of propaganda against the sexual harassment here, also against the assistant. But at this moment, we don't have people speaking with the team on this. I don't know if.
But they're telling their stories, I'm bringing this up because it's within the Parliament, and you're the head of the Parliament, and they're telling their stories. And
we don't have example. Because we need to have an example, concrete example. So I am very, very strong against the sexual harassment. I decided a strong sanction against a member speaking against women. Mm-hmm. You remember, 1 year ago, a strong sanction against this member speaking against women. But I think I'm ready. If there are problems, we will have strong sanction against.
You said you were. I'm going to go into Brexit now. It's going to be here to stay. This topic. You said you were for a longer transition period.
But I think for the European Parliament, it's important to achieve an agreement, a good agreement. But for us, there are three key points. First of all,
Okay.
the rights of the European citizens living in the UK. The second point is the money. The third point is the border between Northern Ireland and Irish Republic.
Okay.
The problem is today the backstop. I think it's better to have a longer period of transition, 3 years maximum.
Can it happen?
Exactly. I am in favor because it's the 3 years of the first proposal of the European Parliament. If we need more time for a new treaty, because after the first treaty on Article 50, we need another treaty for the relations between the European Union and the United Kingdom after the Brexit.
Okay.
During the transition period, we need to work hard for this second.
To ask you very quickly about the murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The reaction of the European Union, do you think it's strong enough against Saudi Arabia?
Our reaction is very strong.
Not just words, but action, concrete action.
Concrete action, we are not responsible on foreign policy. We need a strong action by the European Commission, the European Council. For the European Parliament, I said in the beginning of this session, we asked to Saudi Arabian authorities a strong and very strong and international inquiry on this murder. We want to know not only the name of the killers, but we want to know also the name who pushed the killer against this journalist. I am journalist. I am working hard for a strong action against the killers of Daphne Caruana Galizia. I want to know also the name of the father or the mother of the killers.
Sure. All right.
Also in Slovak, 2 killers killed another journalist. We need pay attention. The journalists are the flag of the democracy and the freedom. I am journalist. For this, I am strongly engaged on this. Also as President of the European Parliament.
Of course. Thank you very much for that, Antonio Tajani, for being with us on the program on Raw Politics.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, coming up on the program, we have the U.S. ambassador to the EU saying Europe is difficult to deal with because it is too divided. Our interview is coming up. Plus, budget kicking, the fierce response from Commissioner Pierre Moscovici to a stunt over Italy's budget. Don't go away. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now we're following a developing story tonight in the U.S. where suspected explosive devices were sent to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former U.S. President Barack Obama. Our team in the Cube, Alex Morgan, they're tracking this story for us. Alex, what is the latest?
Well, Tessa, as you say, a developing story, but devices believed to be appearing to be working explosives sent in the mail to prominent figures this week. Let me break it down for you. Well, on Monday, law enforcement officials in the United States confirming that a suspicious device was sent to the home and found in the mailbox of George Soros, the businessman and the political activist there. Then, yesterday, the Secret Service confirming that a package sent to the New York State home of Bill and Hillary Clinton was intercepted as part of routine mail checks, appearing to be an explosive device. And then on that same day, a package sent to former US President Barack Obama at his Washington, D.C. address, again intercepted by the US Secret Service. Then today, a further package sent to the offices of CNN in Manhattan. That's in the Time Warner building, which led to that building being evacuated, the NYPD being deployed, as well as specialist experts searching that building. All of these devices, a law enforcement official has told NBC News, our partners here at Euronews, that these devices appear to be linked. They appear to be the same design, all seeming to be working explosives sent in the post. Let's show you a picture of them obtained by NBC News. This is one of the devices. Now, these were sent in manila envelopes with stamps on them through the post, and all of them had a return address to the former chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee. Now, of course, that's not to say she's behind them, but whoever sent them would have wanted them, if they didn't get delivered to their intended people, to be sent to her. So one thing that seems to be emerging here is that those targeted with these devices in the post are prominent Democratic politicians. And this apparent intimidation or otherwise move has been condemned by the daughters of a former president and indeed the current president. Let's bring you up a tweet from Chelsea Clinton, Hillary Clinton's daughter, saying, "Every day I'm grateful to the women and men of the United States Secret Service. Thank you." And then Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, tweeting about this, including as well this apparent move, sending one of these to CNN, saying, "I strongly condemn the attempted acts of violence against President Obama, the Clintons, and CNN and others. There is no excuse. America is better than this." So either way, condemnation from both sides of the political aisle, from the daughters of very different presidents, for what appears to be an attempt to send prominent Democratic officials working explosives in the post.
All right, thank you for that, Alex Morgan. We will certainly be following that developing story. First, back with me here in the studio, Darren McCaffrey, a political editor at Euronews, and Maya Delabom, a reporter with Politico based in Brussels and joining us here in Strasbourg. All right, another big story, though, that we've been following is obviously the development in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi journalist. And you managed to speak to actually the U.S. ambassador, Darren.
Yeah, indeed. A man who's been in the post actually only a matter of months. He's called Gordon Sunland. He is a hotel entrepreneur from Seattle on the west coast of the United States. Someone who had at certain times not supported President Trump during the general election campaign, but now is his new ambassador to the European Union. And I started, as you say, by asking him on that key issue that has dominated international affairs in the last few days, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And I started by asking him, essentially, who did he think was responsible and whether the response from the West to Saudi Arabia had been enough. Let's have a watch.
Well, I think that what you have to do is you have to separate the actions from individuals and the actions of the state. And I don't think we know enough yet about what really happened in order to make a judgment. And until we have more information, we're going to withhold judgment.
But we do know at least the Saudi state lied.
I think the Saudi state did what many states do when they're confronted with a problem that they're not generally used to dealing with, because you don't see these activities happening on a daily or weekly basis, thank God, in Saudi Arabia. A stronger and more united European Union in many ways would be easier to deal with, because then a position taken by the senior leadership would reflect a mandate from the member countries and its people. Right now, there is a lot of ping-ponging going on back and forth, and it's like trying to hit a moving target, whether it's dealing with Russia, whether it's dealing with China, whether it's dealing with Iran, whether it's dealing with North Korea. I think if Europe spoke more with one voice, it would be easier for Europe and the United States to link arms and effectively deal with some of those issues.
In terms of like EU-US relations, if it was a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being they're really bad and 10 being the best they've ever been, where would you say they, as the ambassador, where would you say they stand at the moment?
Well, I've described the relationship as a long-term, faithful marriage that has its ups and downs. And while we have a lot of ups and a lot of areas of cooperation, shared heritage, shared values, on the trade side right now we're having some downs because things aren't moving, and the president, as you know, is an impatient man and likes to see things happen in real time, not in months and years, but in days and weeks.
Do you have a favourite leader, though? Angela Merkel, Theresa May?
Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher. Well, she's long gone. Anyone today? Emmanuel Macron?
Abraham
Victor
Lincoln.
Vladimir Putin, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Complicated.
What about Donald Trump?
Very interesting.
Theresa May?
Capable.
Angela Merkel?
Very capable.
Emmanuel Macron?
Complicated.
And the US-EU relationship?
On the right track.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Maya, I mean, we heard there him talking about how difficult it is for the U.S. to deal with a divided Europe. But this is coming from a country where, you know, it's not exactly united, that part. Is it difficult for Europe to deal with the U.S. as well? I mean...
No, I agree with the U.S. ambassador that Europe is divided in the sense that their reactions have been different according to countries. But the answer to this is that there is no foreign policy at a European level. You will never find a united front of all these countries reacting all and speaking with one voice. No, because there's no foreign policy, because foreign policy is a national prerogative. So every country also has its own interests, has its own relations with Saudi Arabia, so they will all react.
So how can Europe move forward in this way when you're saying there cannot be or there isn't one?
There is here a unanimity rule that on foreign policy you have unanimity. So as long as we have this unanimity rule, it would be very hard to, you know, change it and make and create a united front in the EU, because then it means that you would have to have one country uniting, you know, reactions in other countries, and that is difficult to create.
I mean, division really is a recurring theme, and this has been ongoing. Crisis after crisis after crisis here in Europe, it's always about division.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that obviously the United States to a degree feels frustrated that when it's dealing with, let's say, issues like trade, you know, it's talking to Jean-Claude Juncker, but it's not entirely sure whether certain countries are on side. Clearly, Donald Trump will be speaking to other people. I think what was interesting from that interview, though, was on Khashoggi. We heard today finally from the Crown Prince, who talked about how it was a heinous crime, that it cannot be justified, and that those behind it will be held accountable. And I think we're starting potentially to see the United States approach to all of this, which is clearly that, yes, it's a heinous crime, and those that have committed it need to be held accountable. But it's not the responsibility necessarily of the Saudi state. And I think that might be the kind of the get out where we'll not see the United States slapping sanctions or arms embargo.
Do you think that reaction is going to be the same in Europe, that Saudi Arabia is simply too important an ally to damage that strategic partnership?
Again, it's hard to say Europe. You know, every country will have its own reaction. France has been very cautious in this. Germany now is being very more ambitious than other countries. They have proposed, you know, to suspend arms sales. France is more shy. So, you know, you have 27 different countries. So now...
It is incredible today that Emmanuel Macron was asked about it and just would not answer the question about whether France would follow, as one would naturally respect in almost every other field, Germany's lead, and it's not. And it's a sign, I think, essentially of that relationship, particularly that France and Britain have with Saudi Arabia.
The hands are tied.
Hands are tied, yeah.
All right. We're following that story, of course, and a lot more coming up after the break for you. Say goodbye to plastics, straws, forks, and balloon sticks. MEPs vote to ban single-use plastics in Europe. More on that on More Politics. Welcome back to More Politics. Now, in a vote that had environmentalists on the edge of their seats, Europe has taken one step closer to banning single-use plastics. MEPs voted 571 to 53 in favor of assigning certain disposable plastic objects to the history books. It is estimated that if nothing is done to reduce plastic waste by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the oceans. Now, this vote could spell the beginning of the end for plastic cotton buds, cutlery and plates, straws, drink stirrers, and balloon sticks. All right, joining me in the program to unpack what today's vote means, I'm joined by Ricardo Serrao Santos, a Portuguese MEP from the Socialist Party and member of the SND group. And we also have Sirpa Pietikainen, a Finnish MEP from the National Coalition Party and member of the EPP group. All right. The vote is done. Now what? Will there be consensus on the member state level to move this forward?
I certainly hope. We didn't even go far enough on banning on the plastics votes. We do a bit of too little too late if we think of the explosive increase on single-use plastics. And then I really do hope that the Council is not going to negotiate the targets and actions down on the trilogues.
Do you think this is enough? Do you think this is a game changer, or just paying lip service to being responsible?
Look, I think it is important that we approve this legislation. we suffered during 70 years. We had an invasion of plastics, and we did very bad governance and no regulations, and we need a law, a proper law. This is a directive. It's not a regulation, it's a directive, so there is some liberty on the member states in terms of adopting this. I hope that they do it fast and properly, because we need action.
So you think the responsibility is in a government level to change the use of plastics? You think that's where it starts?
What was lacking was good governance. We had an incredible in technological innovation that was the plastics. They were on the environment for 70 years, and now they are even one of the markers that marks the geology of the planet. So we did a very bad governance of this incredible innovation. Plastics are here to stay, but need to be regulated. It
boils down to people, though, using it, right? I mean, how do you actually change behavior?
Well, actually, we have replacing materials, bio-based materials,
so it's
like nanocellulose, what you could use. And this is the reason it would be so important to very acutely ban the use of plastics in single use, basically anything, because you can replace it with other more sustainable materials that you can recycle. And actually then on some systems like drinking bottles, you can create deposit systems where you get more than 90% of the plastics together. So yes, there are actions, and that's why we need to decide them on EU level and then implement on member state level.
Well, looking around at the European Parliament, there's a lot of plastic inside this building.
Oh yes.
Too much. There is no
we should
need.
Do it ourselves too.
Some of the plastics, like bottles for water, we would not need them. We can drink water from the tap or purified water from the tap. So we should get rid of these kind of bottles of plastics. In fact, there are things, other things.
But then there are some states, there are some states that are more willing than others to move this forward. Some are more dependent on plastics, or some it's just part of the lifestyle. I mean, no, you don't agree.
I wouldn't say anyone is more dependent because the replacing materials are. Some of the producers are dependent on the practices and technologies and the big changes there. But for example, you should have a deposit system on carry-on bags. Plastic sturdy bag is very good in the shops, but you should be able to sort of return them, because otherwise you just flood your own house.
But this is really, it's such a big thing to overhaul. I think it will take some time for that. All right, let's move on to another story, because tensions over Italy's budgets are rising. It's something that we've been looking at also here in the Parliament. And yesterday they were on full display. Italian MEP Angelo Ciocca interrupted a news conference by Pier Moscovici by taking off his Made in Italy shoe and stamping it all over the commissioner's paperwork. That's today's Power Play. Right, well, in response to that outburst, Moscovici took to Twitter saying the incident of the Made in Italy shoe is grotesque. In the beginning, we laugh and we joke about it because it's ridiculous, and then we get used to a simmering symbolic violence, and one day we wake up to fascism. Stay aware, he says. Democracy is a fragile treasure. Right, you were reacting to that. Was it a fascist gesture? I mean, is that what it was? Is that how you see it?
Well, actually, we are in a slippery slope, I would say, towards the fascism. It is the idea that you grow into and you accept more and more this kind of violent actions and mockery on the democracy, and you think that it's normal. And actually, it's very important that we would have the constitutional values, proper behavior and proper democracy. We need to behave like civil people if we want to create a civilization.
Looking at the other side, though, as an Italian, didn't he have the right to be angry, to be upset at seeing the other countries ganging up on Italy? I mean,
it happened. I think it is a very example for the young generations. We need proper behavior and the people that control themselves on this kind of gesture. It remembers me. I'm an ethologist by education. I'm a founder of the Portuguese Society of Ethology. And for years, I've been observing non-verbal communication in human and animals. And this is a kind of agonistic behavior. Yes, it is threatening. It is not direct aggression, but it is a threat.
On that note, a non-verbal...
Parliamentarian is where we speak. We use verbal communication.
Yeah, but not looking at non-verbal communication. This is something we're going to be looking at next, because if looks could kill, then Nigel Farage wouldn't be in very good shape right now. Let's take a look at tonight's raw moment.
Noi le abbiamo sempre rispettato le sue, lei non ha alcuna autorizzazione a non rispettare quelle degli altri. Rimanga in silenzio.
What do you have to say to that? I was really
Tajani won the agonistic moment.
Right.
Yes, in terms of non-verbal communication, the other did not respond and was saying the site on the side.
How awkward was that? It was good. Do you think it was good?
It was good.
And when we just discussed previously, do people have the right to be angry and upset and to react? Yes.
And here.
But this is a sort of a proper way of doing it.
An example, just
with the shoe.
All right, thank you very much for that, and thank you for joining us.
Do
stay with us and keep watching Raw Politics. Good night.